Hello, I'm Craig Brelsford, and welcome to another episode of Small Stocks, Big Money. For those of you new to the show, RedChip is an investor relations, media, and research firm. We're focused on emerging growth companies. Our unique platform combines global multimedia with traditional investor relations, reaching investors around the world. Now, today's show features interviews with the executives of two public companies. First up is ASP Isotopes. ASP Isotopes is an advanced materials company transitioning from development into commercial production of high-value isotopes and critical gases. The company employs its proprietary aerodynamic separation process, or ASP, and quantum enrichment technology to produce and commercialize isotopes essential to healthcare, semiconductors, and clean energy. We'll learn more when we speak with the CEO later in the show. Up next is the Metals Company. The Metals Company is developing the world's largest estimated source of critical metals to help deliver U.S. critical mineral independence and support a new era of American industrial strength. We'll learn more when we speak with the CFO later in the show. Before we move forward, let's take a look at RedChat, a revolutionary AI chatbot for small-cap stock analysis.
A new era of small cap research has arrived with RedChip's RedChat, the fastest, most accurate AI assistant for small caps. The days of spending hours sifting through press releases, 10Ks, 10Qs, 8Ks, 13Fs, 13Gs, and other filings is over. Now, get answers in seconds on 4,000 small cap stocks in one portal. Simple, fast, accurate, detailed answers. Meet small caps with RedChat.
Now, let's move on to our quote of the week. It comes from the book, Small Stocks, Big Money. Work hard, be a long-term thinker, develop tenacity, and remember, nothing happens without taking calculated risks. This quote comes from Phil Sassower of the Phoenix Group, and it is featured in Chapter 9 of Small Stocks, Big Money, a book of exclusive interviews with some of the biggest players in the microcap space. Get a digital copy on Amazon today for just $21. Now, let's get started with our first interview today with ASP Isotopes. Hello, today we have Paul Mann, the CEO of ASP Isotopes, trading on the NASDAQ under the ticker ASPI. Paul, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for your interest.
For investors who may be completely new to ASP Isotopes, Paul, how would you describe what the company does and why isotopes have become so strategically important today?
So we make daily special chemicals called isotopes, and Russia controls about 85% of the stable isotope supply around the world. And isotopes are critical for nuclear medicine, as well as nuclear energy and many other common industries today. But increasingly, they're becoming required for things like quantum computing, next generation semiconductors, space travel, next generation stealth coatings, that kind of stuff. And so there's a huge need to secure these critical materials to enable governments and countries to maintain security.
Paul, you mentioned nuclear medicine. Your nuclear medicine business is already generating revenue and growing by double digits year over year. How does this business help support ASP Isotopes as you scale that broader platform?
Yeah, thanks, Fred. So we actually own a couple of radiopharmacies around the world. And radiopharmacies produce radiomedicines to treat things like cancer, oncology. And most radiopharmacies have to buy their stable isotopes from Russia to turn into a radioisotope. Our goal is to form a fully integrated or fully vertically integrated isotope company whereby we produce both the stable isotopes and then have the ability to turn them to radioisotopes and treat patients. So that's really unique. It's growing really well. Demand for radioisotopes is growing double digits every year. That should continue for the next several years as these new drugs get approved. And so yeah, it's a great business to operate, and we look forward to it growing over the next several years.
You recently completed the acquisition of Renergen. Please explain the significance of that.
Yeah, so Renergen sits on a humongous resource of helium, and helium is a critical material as well. In fact, the U.S. Strategic Helium Reserve ran out several years ago. And so helium is now a great short supply around the world. It's required for things like semiconductors, rocketry, many other applications. And again, it's growing at very high single digits rate, and supply is dwindling. So it's a very strategic asset. This asset is probably the most concentrated source of helium in the world. US governments agreed to give us $500 million to help develop this field and turn it into a supply chain. And so it's very critical. And think about our semiconductor isotopes as well, to be a horizontally integrated electronic gases supply of helium and isotopically pure gases. That puts us in a very strong strategic position in years to come.
Paul, you've announced progress with isotopes like ytterbium-176, silicon-28, and carbon-14, with commercial deliveries expected this year. How should investors think about the pace of commercialization from here?
Yeah, so we shipped commercial samples of all three of the Triple 176 and Silicon-28 last year. We shipped commercial samples of carbon-12 last year, and all four isotopes, carbon-12, 14, ytterbium-176, and Silicon-28, should enter commercial production or have commercial deliveries this year. That's pretty significant because all of our customers liked what they saw in the commercial samples. Now it's about ramping this up into commercial production quantities and getting that to customers. And that should allow us to become a cash generating company, which for any company, any startup company, is a major milestone.
Indeed, it is. So great work there, Paul. Now, you recently shipped commercial Silicon 28 samples and secured your largest contract to date. What can you tell us about the significance of that milestone?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So we shipped a commercial sample of Silicon-28 to a customer towards the end of Q3 last year, and the customer confirmed that our enrichment parameters matched theirs, and the sample looked like what it should look like, which is great news. It means we're enriching as we expected to, and we're measuring as we expected to, which is fantastic. And then, Silicon-28 is a really exciting isotope because semiconductor development over the last 40, 50, 60 years has followed Moore's law, which says a semiconductor doubles in speed every 18 to 24 months. Now, until Moore's law stopped working in 2024, and in order to get faster semiconductors, we need new materials. We've exhausted the laws of physics. And Silicon-28 is a material that allows us to do that. So it's a huge amount of excitement over this isotope to make faster semiconductors. And so shipping our first commercial sample and product will be a huge milestone for the company and for the semiconductor industry at large. I mean, there's a lot of excitement over this product.
There's so much to talk about with your company, Paul. We now turn to Quantum Leap Energy, which is tackling one of the most fragile parts of the nuclear fuel cycle. Why is this opportunity so strategically important?
Yeah, it's shocking to think that Russia and China combined control about 55% of nuclear fuel production and nuclear fuel enrichment. Domestic United States has very, very little domestic enrichment. It's tiny. And nuclear energy accounts for 20% or so of United States energy. And arguably looking forwards, the only way to, or it's well believed, the only way to have a stable grid with 24/7 power is via nuclear energy. So there's a huge demand for nuclear energy, given the need for more energy. The world needs to increase its energy production by 25% over the next sort of 5 to 10 years. And so obviously everyone's looking for where they get their new nuclear fuels from. And we hope to be a part of that industry. And we hope to be, one of the first suppliers of nuclear fuels in the future. So Quantum Leap Energy will focus on producing the nuclear fuels of the future, specifically high assay low enriched uranium and lithium-6 and lithium-7 for nuclear fusion and fission. And obviously, for every country in the world, that's hugely strategically important right now.
It's all so exciting, Paul, and we just love telling your story, but we're running out of time here. So just give us that last value proposition. Why should investors take an interest in ASP Isotopes in 2026?
Listen, we are involved in many different critical materials which the world needs for future generations. We're at the crux of hopefully becoming a commercial company in 2026. We spent 4 years developing and building plants, been a painful 4 years doing it. We're right there on the cusp of doing this now. And so 2026 will hopefully be a transformational year for the company. And I look forward to being able to share that with you all as years to come.
Paul, it has been a great pleasure working with ASP Isotopes since 2022 now. Our relationship goes back more than 3 years. Thanks for being here once again with us.
Thank you for your support and interest.
Now, to get more information on ASP Isotopes, visit aspiinfo.com. You'll see research reports, fact sheets, presentations, and the latest videos. It's all free, And you can even subscribe to email alerts to stay on top of the latest news. You can also call 1-800-RED-CHIP to speak to a specialist if you have any questions. We also have a free weekly newsletter you can subscribe to at redchip.com, featuring emerging growth companies like ASP Isotopes. Watch this show again and explore hundreds of small cap stock videos on RedChip's YouTube channel, and also go to our website and sign up on our events page for the webinar series. We have webinars every week, several a week, in which we feature small public companies, mostly our client companies, and you'll hear straight from the CEO, and you'll be able to ask questions after that. Again, visit redchip.com and subscribe today. In addition to our newsletter, you can also order your copy of Small Stocks, Big Money, a book written by RedChip's CEO, featuring interviews with some of the biggest players in the microcap space. Order your copy on Amazon today for just $21. Now, let's move on to our next interview today with the Metals Company. Hello, today we have the great pleasure of welcoming Craig Shesky, the CFO of the Metals Company. Craig, great to have you.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
The U.S. depends almost entirely on imports for several critical battery and industrial metals. When investors look at that vulnerability, where does the Metals Company fit into the solution?
Yeah, it's a great question. In fact, just this month, we've seen a major reduction in the planned nickel ore capacity coming out of Indonesia, which currently dominates the nickel market. What TMC can provide is total independence and, in fact, dominance for the United States in nickel, copper, cobalt, and manganese. We have a resource of polymetallic nodules, these little potato-sized rocks, one of which I have in my hand right here, that have high concentrations of nickel, copper, cobalt, and manganese, sitting about 1,000 miles off the coast of San Diego. We have the technology to collect these rocks and to process them potentially domestically. So this is a very large problem for the United States in that they are reliant upon foreign sources, often funded by China. In fact, for nickel, manganese, and cobalt, the US has zero primary production. What TMC can provide to the United States based on current demand would be about 300 years of manganese, about 200 years of cobalt, and about 100 years of nickel. So it is a very big solution to a very big problem.
Investors have heard about the International Seabed Authority, but you're not working under that. You're advancing under a U.S. regulatory framework. And tell us why that pathway is better, cleaner, maybe faster, more enforceable even.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Going back to the 1970s, it actually was a lot of US companies, but also US regulatory influence and environmental prowess that helped kick this industry off. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, sits underneath the Commerce Department. That is our regulator. NOAA, in fact, pioneered much of the environmental research in nodule collection back in the 70s and 80s and concluded that the US should go ahead with this new industry. So the International Seabed Authority was formed in 1994 with a mandate of delivering a mining code to allow commercial activities to go forward. They have yet to deliver on that mining code. But the United States never agreed to join this International Seabed Authority. The United States never ratified the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea. Treaties do not apply to countries that don't agree to them. And the United States saw that, hey, we're the leaders in this space. We police the high seas. And this was back in the original Cold War. Now that we're in another Cold War really focused on metals, the U.S. has every right to regulate entities and citizens in international waters, and that's exactly what they're doing. They put in place in 1980 the Deep Seabed Hard Minerals Resources Act, signed by President Carter. So this has been the law of the land for about 45 years. It's not a left versus right issue. It's a U.S. versus China issue. And TMC is the first applicant to begin commercial production under this U.S. Regulatory regime.
Now, permitting. Let's talk more about it. It's historically been viewed as the biggest overhang for deep sea mining. What changed in 2025 that materially de-risks TMC's path forward?
One of the key things that changed was a modernization of the regulations put in place by NOAA pursuant to U.S. legislation in the 1980s. We are now closer to commercial production. TMC has done a significant amount of environmental work. We've done much of the exploration work that a contractor would be expected to do. So recognizing that, NOAA has put in place a streamlined, consolidated process whereby applicants who are qualified and have already done resource definition work and environmental work like TMC has, those applicants can apply for exploration, licenses as well as commercial recovery permits at the same time. So really, it's a modernization of an existing rule that was effectively the framework that the United Nations borrowed from when they put in place their draft mining code. So this is a very good set of rules. It's a very good set of regulations, and TMC is going through that process transparently. In fact, we had public hearings on our applications a couple of weeks ago. All of this gives confidence that once a permit is granted to TMC USA, it will survive for many decades to come.
All right, let's turn now again to those what you call the potato-sized nodules. Regarding collection of them, you've highlighted various industry firsts, from integrated pilot collection to near zero waste processing of these nodules. How do these milestones lower execution risk?
For any resource project like this, execution risk, capital risk, technological risk is always at the forefront. So yes, while people have focused in this space on the regulatory and permitting risk, those are elements that are always present in a resource project. Now, typically on land, it would take anywhere from 15 to 20 years to go from discovery of a nickel or copper deposit to production. That's a very long time, and there's a lot that can happen over the course of 15 to 20 years. You may have the technology, you may have the permit, but then as you are ramping up production, as you're building out your infrastructure, keep in mind you usually have to build infrastructure and processing close to where an ore body is on land. Doesn't make sense to transport all of that waste material. That means you have to bring with you port, power plants, railroads, water supply. And as all of that investment is occurring over many years, the commodity markets may not move in your favor. Now, TMC has been able to de-risk this project significantly. We've collected thousands of tons of these nodules, lifting them to the surface. We've developed flow sheets and actually have done pilot processing along with our partners, Pacific Metals, and have now welcomed Korea Zinc, the largest non-ferrous smelting company in the world, onto our share register after an investment of $85 million last year. So all of this helps us de-risk as we ramp up for commercial production. But importantly, it's the resource itself that is the inherent de-risking factor. That's because this resource has a mix of nickel, copper, cobalt, and manganese in one ore body. So rather than being beholden to one or two commodities, which may have violent price fluctuations, we have four commodities. We effectively have a basket that can hedge against some of the commodity volatility and allow us to be profitable really in any price environment.
Good. That segues nicely into our next question here. Your studies, TMC's own studies, show combined project MPVs exceeding $23 billion. Tell us some of the big assumptions behind those ambitious numbers.
Well, these are very detailed documents. They are signed off by third-party experts called qualified persons. They're SEC compliant. And in fact, they're building on resource statements that were originally Canadian compliant. So multiple resource standards have gone into the production of these technical reports. Um, when we're looking at the key assumptions in a pre-feasibility study and an initial assessment, really the key assumptions are: what is the top line metal price that derives the revenue? What is your ramp up profile? What is your production per year? And then what is your operating cost offshore? And what is your operating cost onshore? That will result in your EBITDA, it'll result in your free cash flow. And then over the course of, say, the next 50 years, we're able to discount that free cash flow back to arrive at the net present value today. So another factor, of course, is discount rate. And we used an 8% industry standard discount rate in these models. So one can look at the commodity price assumptions in these documents, and they're actually quite close to where the current commodity prices are. I would bet that over time, we're going to see prices rise for commodities like copper and nickel. But it's important to note that we can be profitable in nearly any price environment, again, based on the fact that we have four metals in one resource. Now, the key costs offshore are the collection of the nodules and then transport to shore for processing. We have an agreement with our partner Allseas to collect and transship those nodules on our behalf. We also have an agreement with Pacific Metals in Japan to initially process the nodules at an existing facility. So all of this has already been proven out, and really it's just a matter of paying a contract fee to Allseas Offshore, paying a tolling fee to our partners onshore to process, and then TMC gets the remaining profitability. So it's a very good model for us. And again, it is the high grade of this resource that allows us to bring in partners such as Allseas, Korea Zinc, and Pacific Metals.
Craig, critical metals, hugely important, probably one of the top stories of our time. Automakers, battery manufacturers, and governments, you mentioned China, all focused on securing these critical metals. But let's talk about partnerships. Who can help you the most right now?
The best possible partner for TMC is actually the US government. In April of 2025, President Trump signed an executive order to unleash America's offshore resources. He directed the Commerce Department to expedite permitting and streamline the permitting process. That has already occurred, and it's under that streamlined process that TMC has applied to begin commercial operations. But that executive order also directed the Department of Energy, the Department of War, Exim Bank, the Development Finance Corp. It directed all of these agencies to explore ways to support this industry, whether financially or whether through offtake agreements, rights of first refusal. There are a lot of tools at the government's disposal, and we've seen over the last year, the government has been willing to use those tools, whether to invest directly in projects, like the Department of War and Department of Commerce did with TMC's partner, Korea Zinc, building a smelting facility in Tennessee, or direct investments in rare earth companies such as NP Materials or USAR. These are companies that have taken on board to the share register the US government directly. So TMC is going to continue to pursue conversations with the US as our permit gets closer to grant, which we anticipate coming very soon, probably less than 1 year's time.
All right, Craig, you're stuck in an elevator with somebody and he asks you, what are you doing? Why should anyone care about TMC? What are you going to say?
TMC has the ability to solve US critical mineral issues for three of really the top dozen difficult metals on the US Geological Survey's critical mineral list. So we can effectively take the US from zero to 100% self-sufficiency and even export in some scenarios for nickel, manganese, and cobalt. It is not easy to catch up to China when it comes to the dominant position they have in metals. They've established that over many decades. TMC is the one company that can completely turn that game on its head for the United States. And yet, we are still trading at a very small fraction of the underlying net asset value. We're trading at about 12% of our underlying net present value based on SEC compliant technical reports. So even getting in at $6 or $7 a share is a very large discount to where fundamentally this resource and this stock should go upon grant of the permit in early 2027.
Craig, it is a compelling story about a national priority. Thank you for telling us the story.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, to get more information on the metals company, visit metals.co. You'll see research reports, fact sheets, presentations, and the latest videos. It's all free, and you can even subscribe to email alerts to stay on top of the latest news. You can also call 1-800-REDCHIP to speak to a specialist if you have any questions. We also have a free weekly newsletter you can subscribe to at redchip.com, featuring emerging growth companies like the metals company. Watch this show again and explore hundreds of small cap stock videos on RedChip's YouTube channel. Also, go to our website and sign up on our events page for the webinar series. We have webinars every week, several a week, in which we feature small public companies, mostly our client companies, and you'll hear straight from the CEO, and you'll be able to ask questions after that. Again, visit redchip.com and subscribe today. In addition to our newsletter, you can also order your copy of Small Stocks, Big Money, a book written by RedChip's CEO, featuring interviews with some of the biggest players in the microcap space. Order your copy on Amazon today for just $21. Now, let's recap the companies we featured today. First, you met ASP Isotopes, ASPI, on the NASDAQ. ASP Isotopes is an advanced materials company transitioning from development into commercial production of high-value isotopes and critical gases. The company employs its proprietary aerodynamic separation process, or ASP, and quantum enrichment technology to produce and commercialize isotopes essential to healthcare, semiconductors, and clean energy. Learn more at aspiinfo.com. Then you met the metals company, TMC, on the NASDAQ. The metals company is developing the world's largest estimated source of critical metals to help deliver U.S. critical mineral independence and support a new era of American industrial strength. Learn more at metals.co. Don't forget, check out our stocks page. It is the biggest small cap stock portal in the industry. It has every company listed on the NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange with market caps of $2 billion and less. And It's categorized by industry. Watch this show again and explore hundreds of small cap stock videos on RedChip's YouTube channel. And be sure to sign up for our weekly newsletter and learn about a lot of small cap companies. Also, go to our website and sign up on our events page for the webinar series. We have webinars every week, several a week, in which we feature small public companies, mostly our client companies, and you'll hear straight from the CEO, and you'll be able to ask questions after that. Again, if you have any questions about any of our public companies featured on today's show, call us at 1-800-REDCHIP or email us at info@redchip.com. In closing, remember, while small caps can provide significant gains, you must be prepared for the downside. Small cap stocks are among the most volatile of asset classes. Some of the companies featured on this show are RedChip client companies, and we may own stock in these companies. So please, always just read our disclosures at redchip.com. Thanks for being with us today. We'll see you next week with some new, exciting, emerging growth companies.
RedChip, 33 years of discovering tomorrow's blue chips today. Introducing the RedChip AI Small Cap Conference, March 19th. Real-world case studies of small cap companies transforming their industries using advanced AI. Visit redchip.com today to register. The RedChip AI Small Cap Conference, March 19th. Redchip.com, discovering tomorrow's blue chips today.